Ladies and gentlemen, I have breaking news. The first episode of Season 3 will be dropping soon. But until then, here's a recap of Season 2. Make sure to press the subscribe button and share my podcast with others who you believe will benefit from it. The guest in Episode 1 of Season 2 contemplated whether to wallow in the depths of his despair or to fight for his very existence. And in the end, he chose life, after reconciling adversity with purpose of life. He also spoke of life being lived in parts and how some parts should never overshadow others. Here's a clip from that episode.
Yeah,
You went through the 5 stages of grief?
it's just, yeah. I mean, and so when we talk about a death, my company died.
Yeah.
A company I started when I was 20 years old.
Yeah.
And you learn about what Jack Daniels is, and you learn you sit on the back porch and you sit there and you wonder, and then just eventually something will click.
Mhm.
And you'll go, I got it. I got to get myself up off this dirt and quit wallowing around in my self-pity.
Yeah.
And I got to look in front of me, because it's not about me right now. It's about my son.
Yeah.
Where am I going to go? How am I going to take care of him? And, one day you pick yourself up.
Was that the thing that clicked? You think about your son, like how I'm going to take care of him?
Exactly. It was just this fear kept on me, and it just took every ounce of my soul to want to try again. I was trying to figure out I need to do something else in life.
Yeah.
I don't know what, but I got to go do something else in life. And my destiny was the same thing that drugged me in, drug me down, drug me back up.
Which was?
Which was, construction and real estate development. So, it started with one phone call and me making a decision. Can I do this again?
Yeah.
And the one thing that was this blaring horn in my brain was like, don't set yourself up for failure.
The title of that episode was 30 versus 60, Life in Parts. In the following episode of Season 2, which was entitled Love or Marriage, my guest offered her professional opinions regarding the signs of a player as opposed to someone who is authentic about revealing their true selves to you. Here's a clip from that episode.
Show up the way that they have marketed themselves. That's a good way of saying that. If I
like a piece, that's like you buy a piece of meat at the grocery store. Really?
Do you show up the way you marketed yourself? Okay. Wow. If you say that spending time with my children is important, okay. When last time you seen your kids? Okay. If you say family is important, when last time you been to the family reunion?
Right,
I mean, are you showing up the way that you're marketing yourself? If you say that, my faith is important to me, we need to see some fruit of that faith. Okay. I'm not saying that, people express their faith differently. So I'm not saying that the way you express your faith has to be the same as mine. But there needs to be some evidence of your faith in your life. Okay. Whether it's how you treat people, whether it's how you fellowship, whether it's do you pay your tithes?
Right.
Do you give time back? Do you help others? Like there needs to be, it can't just be lip service. Well, this is important. If you say that my career is important to me, then we should see you going to work, sir.
Okay.
Like,
but people ignore that and choose to marry
they
over
ignore
love.
The signs. They choose to marry over a feeling. I'm not sure if it's love or not, but they choose to marry over a feeling.
If somebody's lying to you, they're obviously not in love with you.
Well, I think you can love someone but not be in love with them. When you're in love with somebody, there are a lot of things that you accept. Okay? Good, bad, and ugly. You
Okay.
accept that. I think that a lot of people are, really infatuated with that superficial level of love and
That's
the
why I asked you
happy
about the
and the
infatuation.
and the happily ever after.
The third episode of season 2 is entitled Boundaries Please. The guests in that episode discussed the importance of setting boundaries and how to enforce them in order to maintain a healthy mind and body. Here's a clip of that episode.
Yeah.
The last one, but not least, the law of exposure. We need to communicate our boundaries to each other.
Yeah. Again, I don't know what your boundary is unless you've communicated that some way. You don't know what mine is unless I've communicated it. So boundaries don't set themselves.
Are boundaries learned or materialized by happenstance?
I think they're learned. So, for example, when your kids are little and you teach them, if my door is closed, you knock. Okay.
Or you may be in for a big surprise.
That's the natural consequences. Reaping and sowing, cause and effect. Remember, boundaries keep us safe, right? Listen, that's why I don't go to my daughter's house without calling first. No, sir. Boundaries keep us safe, right?
Yes. Who
Cause
wants to
and
see
effect.
that?
Exactly. However, that was a boundary that my parents taught me. I'm assuming that was a boundary that you were taught because we're relating to that.
Yes.
You'll be surprised of how many people that wasn't taught to them. So somewhere along the line, they had an experience that taught them that.
Yeah.
Okay. So sometimes boundaries are taught. Sometimes they're taught we learn them the hard way because there's been a hard consequence. Yeah.
In setting boundaries, can people kind of go overboard and set them too rigid?
Mm-hmm.
And if so, how does one recognize, I may need to calm this one down?
Right. So I like to describe healthy boundaries because there is such thing as a too rigid boundary and a too porous boundary. I like to describe healthy boundaries as a fence. So let's say you buy a house, nowadays they don't give you a fence when you buy a house. That's extra.
Yeah.
So you want to put up a fence and you're like, well, I can't really afford that fence. So you decide not to put up a fence. The coyote's going to get in your yard, the deer, everything's going to get in your yard. If you have a dog, he is not going to be confined. He's going to be in other people's yard. That is a lack of a boundary at all. Okay? So you decide you're going to put up a fence. You put up a fence, but you're like, I don't want anything getting in my yard. So you put up a cement fence. Okay? Nothing is going to get in your yard, but let's say you had a fire in your house and you had to go out the backyard, you're not going to be able to get out the backyard either. So that's an example of a boundary that's too rigid. So a boundary that's too rigid, you feel safe back here in your fortress, but the help, the support you need, you can't get. So a healthy boundary is a chain link fence with a gate. So you have a fence, you feel protected, you can open the gate when you need to allow something in, you can also close the gate when you don't want something in.
Sounds like you're describing cause and effect when you were talking about those boundaries and laws.
Yeah. You see how they work together?
I do see that.
Yeah.
The guest in episode 4 discussed his personal experience as a police officer and the pressures that comes from being a law enforcement officer. That episode looked beyond the badge and at the emotional trials of officers trying to cope with witnessing traumatic or horrific scenes or having to deal with personal matters at home. The guest also discussed how policing has changed and how police departments today recognize the need for officers to have a work-life balance. The guest discussed the mental resources that are available for those officers and how it's important for them to utilize them. He also opined that mentally healthy officers foster safe communities and mutual respect between officers and the people they are sworn to protect and serve. Here's an excerpt from that episode.
We had the example of just maybe 3-4 months ago, 4 Houston Harris County Sheriff's deputies committed suicide in 1 month.
4.
4.
Wow.
You know, so the pressures of the job and the anxiety and just all of the stuff that you see can take a toll on you over a period of time. And the message that we have with dealing with our first responders who go out there and have to actually deal with it firsthand is that, you know, it can affect you. It's okay if you're not okay with that, right? And I remember a call I went on, I actually responded to a friend of mine who I knew, grew up with. He had actually killed himself and killed his 2 sons. And so I responded to the call not knowing it was him.
Yeah.
And I go inside the house and I see him and recognize him, you know, immediately. And then go into the bedroom and see the 2 boys in the bed, and one of them partially skull was blown away, and he's still holding on to his teddy bear as he's laying in the bed.
That's got to be a rough scene.
Yeah, he's 4 years old.
Yeah.
You know, and so how can that not impact you? How can you not feel something when you see something like that?
Yeah.
You know, and so recognizing that you know, officers routinely go and see those types of things. It's okay if that bothers you. It should bother you.
Yeah, I'm not a cop, and it bothered me just hearing it.
Yeah, it should bother you. And so it's okay to reach out and talk to somebody about that.
Yeah.
And so we have to incorporate that into the way that we do our daily business. You know, our routine business should be taking care of the officers and their mental health.
Listening to you describe the routine nature of what it should be, it seems like it's going to be like a generational type of fix. Finally, in episode 5 of season 2, my guest discussed the benefits of forgiveness. Who benefits, the offender or the one who is offended or suffers the harm? He also discusses his personal struggle to forgive those who were responsible for the death of his infant child. Here's a clip from that episode.
And most of the time when people not forgiving someone is because they haven't forgiven themselves.
Speak more about that.
When you haven't forgiven yourself, you blame everybody else.
Okay.
Everybody else is the fault. That person, that's the reason I'm like that. That's the reason I don't go to that church. That's the reason I don't like that brother. That's the reason you blame everybody else. But you hadn't stopped to look at yourself. Where are you?
I hope you enjoyed this recap of season 2. If you hadn't subscribed to my podcast, please do so now and share it with others who you believe will benefit from listening to it. Also, click on the link in my profile, which will take you to my website, Jumping Into Life, jumpingintolife.com, where you can purchase books that I've written, which I hope will offer you hope and comfort. Please stay tuned for season 3 coming very soon. God bless.